All right, so hello everybody. If you're here, could you please turn on your cameras? We're about to start the lecture. Let's see here. Let me share my screen. All right, so we're about to start. Today's lecture is going to be continuation on the video I posted about reliability and validity. And I hope you remember your answers for that 4-question quiz that I posted. Quick announcement though. So next week, we're going to start talking about and statistical analysis. Make sure, so there is an open source software that you would need to download in order to do the activities related to the course. So the software is called Jamovi, and you can see the link in here, and I will post it also to the announcement on Blackboard. So it's fully free, and it doesn't take a lot of space. So make sure you install it sometime today or during the weekend before we start our class on Monday. So although we will, because I'll show you different parts of it, and then we'll do some activities with it next Friday. And so that's first. Second, make sure your Microsoft Excel is updated and installed. So, the Microsoft Office package is provided by the university. So all of you should have an access to it with no problem. So make sure you have Excel up and running on your device, okay? Excel. Okay, so I covered this part. So remember about the scale and different example of the scale. And we said what the scale means is that the idea when you're having a quantitative scale is that you want something to be, first of all, accurate. So it's getting the actual weight of the variable or the variance of the variable. And we talked about different scales before, like about engagement or whatnot, enjoyment, body image satisfaction, those sort of things. So are we measuring with those items you post in the questionnaire? Are you actually measuring it? So that's validity or accuracy. And then are those items consistent between different conditions from one person to the other? So consistent means it's not that everyone would get the same results. Otherwise, it won't be a real scale, right? If it gives the exact same weight. But it means that it's not conditioned upon like the taste of the researcher, and it could be applied in different contexts, right? So one scale that measures could measure satisfaction in one setting, let's say in one population, but it fails to capture that in a different population. So that's an inconsistent scale, i.e. it's unreliable. And so I asked different questions. Some of you got it right. Some of you got it wrong. Okay. So if you recall, so all of you, let me start with like what you got right. So example number 3, the scale gives you a true weight whenever you weight something. Is it accurate? Yes. Are the results consistent? Yes. So that was super easy, right? And then example well, I switch it. Sorry. So example number 2, which is to repeat 1. The scale gives you a different weight whenever you weigh something. Like I went like repeatedly. Whenever you weigh something, it will give you a different weight at different times. So is it accurate? All of you said no. Is it consistent? All of you said no. Right. So that's also easy. Now, number 2, if the scale always add 10 pounds to whatever is weighted. So if I weigh, let's say 120, it will show 130. If the weight the scale gives accurate, the answer is no. But are the results consistent? Is the tricky part. Most of you didn't give most of you said no, but the right answer is yes. The scale is consistent. It consistently adds 10 pounds, right? It's not arbitrary. They don't give a random number or like arbitrary weight. It consistently adds 10 pounds. So it's not technically accurate, but it's consistent. So you see the difference between accuracy and consistency. So there is a bias, literally 10 pounds, a bias like 10 pounds plus, but it's a consistent bias. And this distinction is just like some trick, like a quiz question. It's helpful then for actual research, because assume you have that scale, you own it, and the only problem that it adds 5 pounds, can you still use it?
Yes. You know it's 5 pounds, so you just minus.
Yeah, exactly. Ray, you want to say something?
Yeah, so what you're pretty much saying is just that it's just consistently wrong, correct?
Yeah. It is. Well, that's a very good question. Yeah, it is consistently inaccurate, but that inaccurate result is predictable. And so, like what Anna said, yeah. So if you have that scale, you can pretty much use it, but you would just subtract 10 pounds for whatever something you're weighing, right? And we're going to explain why this distinction matters, right? In a second. And then if you're lifting things up and rate them of like heavy or weight, are the results accurate? And most of you said no, actually the results are accurate. Okay. Are they consistent? No. And here's the tricky part. How many of you do weightlifting? Anyone of you does weightlifting?
I do.
Okay, so Ray, what would be like, and like knock knock, but what would be like an average, let's say what's like an average weight for you when you lift up, like something that is not too heavy or too light?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, like for you,
yeah,
what's like, so when you go working out, what would be like the average like weight that you would lift? Something that is not too heavy for you and not too light for you.
I guess like for like bench, I don't know, like 185.
Okay. So that's average for you.
Yeah, that's just like me warming up kind of thing.
Okay. Right. So for you, it is true that that weight is not too heavy.
No.
Okay. For me, that's too heavy. Right. Okay. For you, that's accurate. So if you say, man, that's not too heavy, it is a true statement. For you, it is a true statement. And when I also say that's too heavy, for me, it is a true statement. But are those, if we rely on personal opinion, is that consistent? Is that subjective or objective?
It's subjective.
Well, it's subjective, I think.
Oh,
objective means it's independent of the subject of the person. subjective mean it is related to the person or the subject, the one who's doing the act. And so that's what we mean by being consistent or consistent. So do you now see the distinction? Like, yeah, like if I feel it is light, you feel it is heavy, Maura feels it's somewhere in between, all of us are accurate within our own individual experiences, but that's not a consistent way to measure it, okay? So that make it valid but not reliable, because you cannot rely on just subjective experiences. Yeah, it's valid for you, it's not reliable across the board. There's no consistency across the board, different contexts, different people. If we measure by weight, then yeah, like it is 200 pounds. That's like an objective statement. Whether you find it light, like heavy, medium, that's up to you. But the objective statement, the consistent and accurate way, is just to have some type of a scale, and that's it, right? Without adding. And so that here, what you say, so when you have something that is reliable and not valid, that's like the 10 extra pound scale. So it's hitting the same area, but it's not, it's a little bit off, okay? And that's, for instance, let's say, and we're going to the example, if you're measuring, let's say, for example, like learning. So learning is your subjective outcome, but then you're measuring satisfaction with the class, okay? Well, satisfaction with the class is different than actual learning outcome, right? But it's consistent. If you measure satisfaction with the class, it is a reliable scale, but it's not measuring learning outcome, it's measuring satisfaction. So it's measuring something else accurately, but it's not applicable to the things we're interested in, right? Reliable, valid, not reliable is when you rely on subjective experiences. So qualitative research, for instance, as you may recall, we said it depends on subjective experiences. You cannot say those experiences are wrong per se, but they don't have reliability, i.e. they don't have generalizability. I interviewed 10 people in one college. Those represent their own subjective experiences, right? I cannot say they are applicable, okay? They are true within that personal context, they're not reliable, okay? So valid, not reliable, that's qualitative research, basically. Neither reliable nor valid, it's just that weight that is totally broken. Both reliable and valid is yes. You have a true, like a fully functioning scale. I am measuring, let's say, excitement, and I have measures about excitement, whether they are psychophysical or even like filling like some items, okay? Right. Okay. And so, yeah, reliability, what like, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but how do they measure reliability then? So it's consistency. So reliability always means consistency. If I'm measuring like some type of a personality scale, let's say extroversion. If I give it to you today, and then next week I give it to you, the results should be, the scores should be pretty close, like almost the same, right? So that's what they call test retest. I test you now, I test you a few days later, the results are almost matching, right? So that's a test retest. If I alternate the form as well, so for instance, in one instance, I say, how are you excited about watching the game? Okay, and then I ask, when you think about watching the game, do you feel excited? Well, I basically ask the same question, right? So if those both questions give me the same results, then I have consistency. Yeah, so the scale does not change. Here we're talking about a figurative scale, right? Like something on a, we're going back to talk about survey questionnaires, okay? Forget about physical scales for now, okay? So that's like consistent between versions and consistency across time. And then individual items. So for instance, if we're measuring, let's say we have a scale for extroversion also, because that's something that's used a lot. The items should also closely match. Let's say I have 5 items. So let's say the scale says I'm a talkative, I'm outgoing, I feel comfortable around others, and I like approaching people. So those are 4 items from extroversion, right? The score you get for each question, if you're the participant, should be pretty much close. Like, it cannot be that one is one side and the other items on the other side. Otherwise, they would be measuring totally different personality traits, right? And so each item is consistent to other items and with the score as a whole. Let me ask you a question. Do you know the personality quizzes like you find in BuzzFeed website, BuzzFeed? Like what
Yeah, it's
Disney
called
princess are
BuzzFeed.
you?
Yeah, it's called BuzzFeed.
Yeah. So they're like one, like what Disney princess are you, or like what medieval knight you would be, like what country that represent your character. And those quizzes, so they are fun, they're good to spend time, but they are not reliable. And the reason is, so first of all, they're not reliable because first, and you may guess from the slide, the items don't make sense with one another. Like they would ask like, what's your favorite drink from Starbucks? And then they will ask something else about, I don't know, your childhood hero, and then ask something about your favorite car and like within what state you live in. So those things are totally unrelated to one another. But then that somehow should measure something we call what Disney princess are you? So that's you are. So that's the issue, right? If it is a reliable scientific scale, the items should be consistent with one another. Okay. Then validity is we have 2 things: internal and external validity. Internal validity is that, again, are the items of the questions measuring what we are intending to measure? And so that's related more to the composition of the questions, how you're writing the questions, how many questions you have, how consistent those questions in relation to the theory underlying the scale, right? So high internal validity has to do with the cohesion of the questions within your scale, okay? And so high internal validity would give you a strong study. External validity is something we talked about before. That's more related to the sampling. So we said like there's something called sample to population generalizability. So the sample you get in the study. So for instance, I poll college students about their intention to take the vaccine. All the percentages that I'm going from the student sample could be generalizable to the whole population of the state or San Diego or the United States for that matter. The answer is no, right? Because you have different characteristics, you have unique characteristics other than the population. So we covered that already. That's like sample for population generalizability. Internal validity is what we're going to focus on today. So to conclude this part before delving more into internal validity, so standardized measurement gives you reliability. So we have numbers, we have standardized measured items, and so those would be consistent as opposed to subjective descriptives. So it's not like you saying, I feel heavy, I feel this is heavy, or I feel happy. Like there's like certain numerical scales you could answer. Accuracy that's related to sampling is called external validity. So the sample is representative of the population. And it could be also this generalizability to the theory. That is to say, the sample is not totally different than the population. So the theory would still be accurate. And we're going to talk more about this when we talk about experiments. And accurate measurements, which we're talking about today, give you internal validity. right? So we were saying you're measuring excitement, the items will talk about excitement or ask about excitement. You're saying you're measuring self-esteem, the items are talking about self-esteem, okay? Those internal validity have three things. You don't have to remember those names, by the way. I'm going to just explain how they work. So we have the content validity, which is how similar the questions are to the name or like, sorry, to the concept. Okay. The concept validity, how are they related logically to related concept? And testing validity, it's basically if that scale could predict something. And aside from you're asking why I have chocolate caramel cookie, what does have to do with validity? I'm going to explain in later. So basically, you know how to differentiate between a real scientific scale and a BuzzFeed scale. Okay, a BuzzFeed quiz and a true social science based scale or quiz or questionnaire. Okay, there are 6 criteria that I'm going to go over them one by one. So it's called face validity, exhaustiveness, internal coherence, relatedness, uniqueness, and prediction. So uniqueness and relatedness are sort of like the opposite, but they are very close. Exhaustive and internal coherence are similar, and prediction is also what matters as a matter of fact for research. So content validity is it's the most simplest one. It's like first is like face validity. So at face value, the items look like the things you're measuring. So for example, let's say we're developing a scale for film enjoyment that includes items such as I enjoyed watching the movie. While watching the film, I felt happy. Okay, the movie was sensational. So yeah, I enjoy, happy, film enjoyment. They're talking about the same thing, right? Exhaustiveness, on the other hand, and we talked about this if you recall when we talked about content analysis. So the scale covers all the dimensions of the variable and not just one aspect. Continue with the example I'm giving. Let's say there is a scale called the drama enjoyment scale. So to what extent drama means TV shows in general, like right, like TV drama. And so that's an actual scale developed by those two scholars, Rani and Bryant. And so they said the items would be if the drama, if you thought the clip was like exciting, suspenseful, good, well acted, plus did you overall enjoy it, and did you enjoy the subject matter, right? So you could, Maura, can you tell us a show that you've watched recently or have been watching?
Yeah.
Totally random.
Last Chance You. It's a show on Netflix. It's about, I don't know, that's pretty random. What do you think of? Does it have to be more well known?
No. Yeah, it's fine. It's Last Chance You. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's like one show. And so it's not saying here, this scale is not only asking, did you enjoy it or not? So that's the overall enjoyment. But do you think that show was well acted?
Do I think it's?
Yeah, you think the actors were doing a good job?
Yes, it's a reality TV show, so I don't think they're acting, but
Yeah, well, actually, yes. Some of them are very, very poorly acted.
yeah, they're good. They're good.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Did it have suspense? Was it like?
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. And then you said you overall have you enjoyed it?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's like what multidimensionality. So it's measured, okay, relationship to the show as a whole, relationship to the how well the actors were playing, or even the even if they are reality TV, actors. And then if it's suspenseful, so suspense is like creating, well, it is suspense from one episode to the next, or like excitement, okay? And if it's exciting in general. So that's like, yeah, I'm not, when I say drama enjoyment, that covers like more things than one thing. Related to that is that like you having internal coherence, so you don't have items, so the items you have are not contradictory or irrelevant, right? So here, for example, we have a show about drama enjoyment, okay? So suppose I added an item that says, I thought, sorry, there's a T missing. I thought the lead actor or actress was physically attractive. Is this question related to drama enjoyment scale? What do you think? So I have a scale that I want to measure if people enjoyed the show, enjoyed the drama, so drama enjoyment. And there's a question about physical attractiveness of the lead actor or actress. Should that be included or not? Okay, Grant, why not?
Because it doesn't have anything to do with the show itself. It's just something you feel like that you personally just enjoy. It doesn't have to do anything with acting ability or anything.
Right. So can you watch a show can you watch like a terribly done show and still find the lead actor or actress to be attractive? Right. So yeah, so if one can exist independent of the other, then the answer is no. Yeah. It could be, for instance, it is a different thing. It could be related though. So you are attracted to shows that feature attractive people, but that could lead to you enjoying it, but it could not as well, right? So it's a different concept, but not the same. It does not belong there, right? So that's what we mean by internal coherence. Yeah, when you're measuring enjoyment, you're measuring things related to enjoyment, right? But here, suppose you're developing a scale for game enjoyment, to change it a little bit. And then the items ask, do you think the game was fun? Did you think the game created like a fun experience, excitement, and satisfaction? Are those three aspects related? So fun, excitement, satisfaction? Yes, no? You can use thumbs up or down, by the way, guys. Okay, so yeah, the answer is yes. So we can argue that you could add more, but we would say fun, excitement, and satisfaction with the game, I mean, are all talking about slightly different aspects of the same construct, okay? Here, so relatedness, and this is, so now this is something about related to things outside the concept or the construct that you're measuring and how they relate to other things. So here, I'll give you an example. So relatedness means that the measured variable you develop a scale for should be related to other concepts that are theoretically and logically related to it when you measure them as well. And if I want to give an example, it will become much clearer what I mean. So suppose we're measuring the trait of narcissism. People are familiar with narcissism, right? Narcissism, personality. Which of the following concepts should be mostly related to narcissism? So A, arrogance, B, openness to experience, and C, self-discipline. Which one should be more related to narcissism? A, B, or C?
Arrogance.
Yeah, yes, sir. Arrogance, right? So yeah, things like arrogance, maybe boasting. Well, although boasting is it's one aspect of, but yeah, you would say arrogance and narcissism are related. Sarah, may I ask you a question? Why don't you think narcissism should be related to openness to experience?
I think when I think of narcissism, I think of somebody who thinks very highly of themselves, and kind of like the world revolves around them. But I feel like openness to experience doesn't really correlate with the attitudes of narcissism.
Yeah, that's like, so there is no logical reason to suspect that openness to experience is correlated with narcissism. Yeah, there is some logical connection between arrogance and narcissism. You think highly of yourself and think low of, you look down on others. So those are logically related, so they should be related even when we measure them. That's the idea. So that's relatedness. Related to it is uniqueness. And so on the other hand, the concept cannot match exactly the same as other concept. Otherwise, those two things should be counted as the same. So if you have items to measure narcissism and items to measure arrogance, they should be correlated, but not like 100%. Otherwise, you're defining narcissism and arrogance as the same thing. Here, another example or a question. So if you define game enjoyment, so I came up with that with this game enjoyment scale. I say it's if the game is being enjoyable, fun, and satisfying. And then another person came with like a game excitement scale. I called mine game enjoyment, and the other person called it game excitement. And it's being if the game is exciting, entertaining, and engaging. Are those two concepts unique from one another, or do you think they're about the same or almost the same?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, okay, Jarrett, I develop a scale of, I call it the game enjoyment scale. I need to ask, did you find the game to be enjoyable, fun, satisfying? You come up with a scale and call it game excitement, and it basically asks if you felt the game was exciting, entertaining, and engaging. Are we measuring two separate things, or do you think those two things are almost the same? We're basically talking about the same thing.
Yeah, I was gonna. I'm not too sure. I feel like it would be different, but kind of in the same like overall genre. Maybe like specifically like your research question might be different for the scale, but I guess like the genre of the research is kind of the same. Like it would be enjoyment of like video games or like games.
What I'm trying to say, can we merge those two? Would it make more sense to merge the two? Any idea? Sarah, what do you think? Should we merge them, or you think they are two uniquely different concepts?
I feel like they're two different concepts because something can be enjoyable without necessarily being like super exciting. Like something could be more slow paced but still enjoyable. Even though they're both related to like, I don't know, something can be enjoyable and exciting, but it's not necessarily the same thing.
You're raising a very good point, but if you look at the items, how we operationally define the thing. So here, enjoyable, fun, satisfying versus exciting, entertaining, and engaging. Are those two distinguishable, or do you think they are very, very close? Right?
Yeah, to be honest, I think they're close enough.
Yeah. So Sarah's point is right in the sense that if you're developing something about game excitement, the items, you make sure that you're not getting into another concepts territory, for lack of a better word, that is enjoyment, right? Here, the items I'm trying to say, forget about the label, look at the items. So enjoyable, entertaining, that's the same. Exciting and fun, close, very close, and you know, like satisfying and engaging. Yeah, like about emotional. So yeah, if something about excitement, if the items are truly uniquely about excitement to the extent that we can distinguish it from entertainment, from enjoyment, then yes, we would consider those two different concepts. If not, they are the same. So that's what we mean by uniqueness. And this part is the hardest, by the way. Believe me, my dissertation was in skill development. It's really hard to argue, especially that in social sciences, we don't measure physical entities for the most part. It's really hard, like you sit in front of people and try to argue that excitement is different than enjoyment. It could be vaguely in your mind like it's two different, but tell me operationally actually how the two could be different. It takes a lot of work and efforts to do that. Finally, we have something called predictiveness. That is to say, the measured concept or scale should predict some outcomes, whether they are in attitude, in like in affection, in behavior and action, etc. So that scale, if we have a scale for game enjoyment, for instance, it should predict to a great extent people's willingness to play the game again, right? So if someone plays, yeah, I made you try a video game, and you said, yeah, I highly enjoyed it. Ask you, okay, you want to play it again, or you want to get it as a gift? You say no. That means my scale probably is not that accurate, it's not that valid, because yeah, it might be measuring something else, but it should predict that people would then are more likely to play the game again, right? If I ask you, for instance, did you like the restaurant experience, by the way, in which we can enjoy again if you're in San Diego County, and then ask you, do you want to come? You plan to come again at any time, and you said no, then yeah, maybe the response is not accurate. So that's like predictiveness. So if I measure brand attitude, it should be somewhat correlated to brand preference or brand purchase, right? So that's accuracy. And so that's it. One fun, and this is the last thing, and then we're going to conclude today. And there will be a recorded video, like also. If like I have a friend who say, okay, if you go to a restaurant, and then if you really want to know if you enjoyed it or not, ask yourself, would I be willing to come here again next week? And if it's not, you didn't really like it, you maybe be somewhat, and then am I willing to come here next month? And then, okay, so maybe next month you didn't like it much, but you still like it. If you say, yeah, I don't plan to come here again, then yeah, you didn't really like it, you might just say it. So that's what I mean by predictiveness, right? So your response to that question should predict, yeah, the type of action you will take in the future. So that's it. Do you have any questions? Okay, and so if that's the case, I hope to see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, doctor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
for
you.
coming.